Welcome everybody. I've got some more tips and tricks for the new players to Vintage Story. So if you find these helpful, please let me know down in the comments section. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more Vintage Story content. Oh, and if you're a veteran player and you think I've missed a tip or something, leave that in the comments as well. And I'll make a part 3 to my tips and tricks videos for Vintage Story. But anyway, guys, let's jump right in. There is a huge amount of blocks and items in Vintage Story, and for the new player, it can be easy to get a little overwhelmed and maybe miss some of the important things that you should be building with. One of those is definitely the stone path. It's a very easy recipe, and this block, if you look at the tooltip, actually increases your walk speed, so it's really great for pathing around your base area. And like I said, very simple. Any stone that you have, whether it's granite, sandstone, doesn't matter the type, you can use medium or low fertility. I guess you could probably use high too if you were kind of crazy, but there you go. And it takes very little in the way of the soil, so you can, as long as you got plenty of stones for mining and whatnot, you can really start to stack the stone paths. For many of you new players out there, you might have already realized that just simply building a bed and sleeping does not set your spawn point here in Vintage Story. No. For that, you are going to need the temporal gear. And this can be acquired as a drop off certain monsters, a very rare drop when you're panning, and it can even be acquired from trading, from certain traders like that. But in order to set the spawn, it's a very simple process. Simply put it on your hotbar in an empty hand. Once you've got it selected, point it to the block you want to set as your spawn point. So right here, we'll do it in front of the bed. I'm going to hold down the right mouse button. We'll see it spin up. And boom, now it is set. And of course, it consumes the gear. If you're playing on a multiplayer server, each player will need to get their own gear and set their spawn points. There are a lot of different wild crops you'll come across in Vintage Story, but one of the most important is flax. This is going to make everything from your bowstrings to the bags I'm wearing, your bed, and heck, even the armor that I have on right now is made from linen, which is all comes from flax. So when you're out and about exploring or collecting crops, make sure you make room in your inventory for the flax seeds and start cultivating this stuff right away. You can even eat the flax grains, but it does have a lower satiety or saturation than the other types of grains, rye and spelt, so it's really best for feeding to your animals, but in a pinch, it will work. Rope is going to be a very important material as you go through the game. You'll craft several things out of it. Now, you could just grab some of your cattails, go right across the top and make a quick coil of rope, but cattails are also pretty important as you go through for your skeps and beekeeping, so save those and start collecting wild vines. You'll see these grown off trees. It even sometimes grows on the sides of hills and whatnot. 3 of these right across the top, just like you would with a cattail, will make you 1 coil of rope. Now this looks like a great place to set up a base. I've got a lot of flat area over here next to a very scenic mountain, even a little waterfall. But there's one problem with this location, and if you're new, you might not be totally familiar with the temporal stability mechanic in Vintage Story. So notice this turquoise or bluish gear down here in the bottom. It's reading 99%, and it is now rotating counterclockwise. You do not want to build in an area where you see this thing rotating in this direction. What will happen is it will slowly deplete and you will eventually go insane. You will enter the world of rust, which is pretty much a death sentence for you and your character. So don't settle in an area with high temporal instability like this, unfortunately. Now this can be turned off after you've generated your world with console commands, but just keep in mind if you do turn that off, it will also eliminate temporal storms as well. So if you're having trouble with those, or if you just wanted to settle in a place that the temporal instability won't let you, well, just enter that command and it won't be an issue. Moving the camera as you nap and work on pottery can be a little bit annoying and even maybe cause motion sickness, but there's a way around this. So if you hold down the left Alt button, it will free up your cursor and you can move this around, and this actually works for napping, pottery, and blacksmithing as well. So you can still craft in this way and you don't have to worry about jiggling your camera constantly. If you're playing on a standard or wilderness world, then you will come across ruins, and they're not only just there for flavor, but they can, in fact, have treasure. Now, you might come across storage vessels, which go ahead and just break those open. They'll drop everything from cattails to rare seeds that you can only find in the ruins, so that's definitely a bonus, but also make sure to whip out your shovel and start digging around, because you might come across something like, here we go, some bony soil. And of course, this stuff is great for sifting and panning. You'll get better drops out of bony soil, and occasionally you can find underground rooms with even more interesting loot. If for any reason you want to know your coordinates exactly, and not just by opening up the map, you can have a heads-up display just underneath your mini-map over here if you hit Control+V. Beekeeping in the world of Vintage Story is very important. It offers some great resources such as honey and, most importantly, wax. So at some point you're going to want to find a wild beehive and bring it home and start to domesticate, but that can be very difficult locating the wild hive. So let's talk about some tips I've learned. Now, most importantly, you're going to hear the bees before you see them. So first thing you're going to want to do is, if you have a pair of headphones or earbuds, definitely use those. Go into your sound tab, turn the music level to 0, at least temporarily while you're searching for bees, turn your ambient level up, and if it's raining or anything like that, turn the weather sounds down, because that's going to interfere. The bee sound is very faint. We are going to hear that momentarily. I'm going to give you an example of it, but first let's just talk about the climate bees prefer real quickly. Bees like warm climate. Now, the default generation, it starts the player in the northern hemisphere. So if it's winter or if you're in a really cold climate, just head south. Heading south will most likely take you towards warmer climates, and you'll find bees more often down there. So now, like I said, let's move away from my agricultural spot and into the domesticated bees, and we're going to be very quiet and listen here. That is the sound of bees. And you can see that even with 246 multiple skeps, they're not very loud. Very, very faint, easy to miss. So when you're going from tree to tree, listening for that sound, first of all, if you just get absolutely frustrated, there is a mod called Buzzwords, which will literally put text on your screen, buzz, 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 notifies you when you're near a wild hive. So like I say, if you just get absolutely frustrated, but if you want to stay immersed in the world and not really have that kind of mod activity going on, then like I said, be persistent, you'll find them. And once you do, you've located a tree that has a wild hive, you confirm that. What you want to do is set up a little tower and get that wild or that domesticated skep that you've whipped up, put that as close as you can to the bees themselves. Of course, the skep is a very simple recipe, just a little bit of clay, some cattails, and boom, you'll have an empty skep with you. Now, this one's empty, you can see, because it's hollow inside. If we go back inside in a moment, we can see what it looks like when they're full. And you'll just leave this here, maybe set yourself up a little campsite nearby, sleep overnight, and check in the morning. Make sure you've surrounded it with flowers that will attract the bees to your skep. And don't worry about what kind of flowers. As long as it's a flower, it won't matter. And then once it looks like this, you know you've got an active colony. And of course, it'll say at the top, the populated skep appears at the tooltip. And then you can pick this up. You will use Shift and Control to switch it into your backpack slot, so you're not going to be able to pick up and carry it in your inventory, an actual populated skep. You'll have to remove a backpack, and then this will go into that backpack slot. But once you've got it home, you can actually start to place them here on anything you want, and boom, you will have started to domesticate bees. In my previous tips and tricks video, I talked about the importance of panning, and it's still very important, but one of the things you might come across while panning is metal scrap. Now, don't throw this stuff away. It's actually got a really interesting use. So if we hit H on it, one of the things we see we can make is a scrap weapon kit. And it might not be immediately apparent what this is, but if you craft one of these up, and this is going to be very helpful early game. Again, use some wild vines for your rope here. Got that going. Now we want to put that in our hotbar. Let's go ahead and jump up. We're going to place this in our use hand, our right hand. Hold down the right mouse button. And there we go. It basically manufactures a little bit of a weapon for us. Now, I think it's random what it can make, but this is actually the second scrap mace that I've gotten here from it. But again, early game, when you're just getting started, this kind of thing can really be a benefit to you. Domesticating animals in Vintage Story is a lot of fun, but it is quite an investment in time and resources, so you want to protect these little guys as best as you can. So if you're going for an outdoor pen or an indoor barn, either way, make sure you replace the floors in whatever pen or animal enclosure you're going to be using. Do not use natural soils of any type. You must use packed dirt, wood, rammed earth, whatever you want. But natural soils will potentially generate or allow a wolf or a bear to spawn inside your enclosure. So protect those animals. All right, and for the final tip today, no, it's not about fighting drifters. Trust me, I wish it was. It's actually a very simple one. Just make sure when you're using your ladders, you do skip a space. It's not necessary for climbing to have a ladder on every single tile as you go up. But that's going to do it for the tips and tricks video. I really appreciate you guys stopping by for this one. If you did miss that first one, make sure you check the description. The link for my first tips and tricks and all my other Vintage Story content is down below for you. Also, if you want to catch me live on Twitch, that link is in the description. And if you want to support me on Patreon, that one is there too. And of course, I'll love you forever if you do. Thanks everybody. Have a good one.